snare and
Just
the,
that strip,
and
like
the
a strip
meat.
of it.
Yeah, the whole thing. Now, I just saw Roy Haynes. Roy Haynes is 88 years of age, and the sucker is playing his ass off.
I saw him about 10 years
I just
ago.
saw
and
Richard Davis. Richard Davis is 84.
Yeah.
But I'm 70, and like I say, I'm starting to have problems with arthritis in the hands. And that's what Blakey used to talk about all the time.
Right.
He said, man, my legs just hurt so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when I get ready to get into bed, I have to pick my legs up. And the hands are damaging now with that craft. I got some kind of nerve damage in it, you know. So if I see me drop my stick and you see me starting to play with my tongue, I'm not a freak. Yes, I am, brother. I mean, you know, yes, I am. See, that's a historical thing. Papa Joe Jones from Birmingham. This was bassist first. Do you know why they call this a sock symbol?
Because the foot, I don't know.
The symbol used to be down by the
yeah,
shoe.
Right,
Papa Joe Jones put the rod in it and lifted it up.
Low boy and the hi-hat. Yeah.
That's who developed that whole thing.
Right.
And they were doing like the straight four on the bass drum.
Right.
That lasted up all the way to max until Kluk. Kenny Clark got into it. Kenny Clark started it, you know, with the accent on it. Now, to show you how Tony reinverted it, Tony started playing 4/4 on the sock symbol
Right.
instead of the bass drum.
Right.
That gives an extra swing to it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, it freed his hands up then. He didn't have to play. All the time. Walk the dog.
Yeah, something there.
Yeah. Umane pane
You know, I went to the Church of John Coltrane out in San Francisco.
Oh, nah.
And Fillmore, and they do that at the end of the sermon. And then he starts to play Reverend King on the saxophone.
Oh, nah.
Yeah, and
Alhamdulillah.
the whole church, you know, chants that.
Is this your sock?
Yeah.
Can you make it a little more? How you make it a little more crisp? You got a thing that?
To tilt it.
How you make it a little bit more crisp, sharp?
Oh, it's on my stand, but yeah. We'll
Okay, cool.
Cool. And if not, I will just spin it. Oh, you're good. I'll just spin it. If it gets stuck, if it gets in like a air pocket, I'll just spin it real quick.
Cool.
Yeah.
Salatu wassalam wa laka alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.
I'm trying to get another tune in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Just patience. You got to just treat people out here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You say you'd be ready in 1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute.
Square business.
1 minute.
1 minute. What's the drummer's name?
Ryan?
Ryan?
Yeah. Ryan Jewell.
Ryan Jewell, stop looking at me. Don't steal none of my shit.
All right, man. I'll say it
I won't
again.
even listen. I got your
No,
phone.
stop.
I'm
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 sorry,
gonna zoom
brother.
in on him and get some tight shots.
Yeah,
No.
Can you get his, I want to see his left hand.
No,
Study that one. Study
because
that
you're going to have to slow it down to 16 in order to be able to write it down.
We
That's
can-
what they
we-
did
we
with
can-
Charlie Parker.
We can do that these days, man.
Yeah.
Slow down, get tight.
Don't steal, Ron. Leave it alone. Let it go out in the air. It'll come back to you. my drumming friend from Cincinnati. All Elvin was doing was playing triplets, but it depends on where you accent it. He can be the other, other. But Elvin could do it with his hand and his foot. He could play paradiddles with his hand and his feet. So the reason he sounded like a cave-in is because he was playing the first part of the paradiddle with his hand and the second part with his foot. Fabulous musician. Virgo always sounds like a cave-in, you know? Yeah. Stop looking at me, Ron.
I was gonna say, if you want to use my six pedal too, it's
I'm cool.
musical. Okay.
See, your pedal has a recording in it, and you be recording my shit. Leave me alone, man.
Yeah, we ready, bro.
Okay. About all the world call that's Elvin's thing. Just saw Roy Haynes in Atlanta, 88 years of age, still playing Snap Crackle Pop. So I asked Blake and Roy, how did you all get that crisp sound on your snare drum? Blake had told me he took a piece of wax paper and put in between his snares and the meat of the bottom drum, and that gave it that crisp sound. Richard Davis, 84 years of age, a monster. What we're trying to do today, as you read in the yellow folder, this is entitled Unfinished Business. The Almighty's allowed me to play and perform for 58 years. I started at 12 for 2 no-meat hamburgers, $2, and all the rot gut whiskey I could drink. And that time in Alabama, we were drinking Joe Louis White Lightning. And they couldn't afford to put a worm in the bottle like tequila, so in the bottom of the bottle of White Lightning was a roach. And they swore that it made it more of a kick. I didn't know, you know, but I started at 12 and for 58 years, so this, because of health reasons, as the brother said, is my farewell performance, and I must say, I couldn't have wished for a better audience other than Ryan to do my last performance. So I'm saying this, and the title is Unfinished Business, and it's not going to be that long because at 70 years of age, my hands will start to cramp because of nerve damage, and they're like Horace Silver's can't straighten his hands out now. So, and McCoy, like you said, is starting to have problems, you know. So when I finished, I'd like to read to you a short list historically of some of the musicians that didn't make it, that we are trying to finish the business for. Of course, Train, everybody knows that. So while we are playing, what we are trying to do is praise the Lord and open the portal. Once you get in the portal, it's no longer you playing, the music is playing you. So what we ask you to do while we are playing is think of somebody on the other side or somebody on this side and think well of them and ask blessing for them, ask blessing for yourself, and praise the Lord, as they say now in the get well churches. Praise the Lord. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Ain't but one Lord. Ain't but one music. There's only one universal key. That's C. Everybody can play C. You know, everybody can play C. Everybody can play that. But that's what we are trying to do. I met this young man in Cleveland when we had the Black Unity Trio. If any of you would like to see what it was about when I was in my 20s, Just Google blackunitytrio.com and pull up the album Al Fatiha, and you might be familiar with the famous celloist who just passed named Abdul Wadud. That's who was in that group, the Black Unity Trio. You hear a tune on there called John's Vision. What we were saying is this is what John was saying. But we were also trying to portray to you that this is after John. Because when John died, everybody got scared and they just wouldn't deal with the music. Pharaoh at that time was artist in residence at Western Reserve in Cleveland. So we got a chance to play with Pharaoh. He had Lonnie Liston, Clifford Jarvis, and a bass player that I played with from Atlanta named Cyrone. But this young man, at 19 or 20, used to come around and watch us play and sit up there like he was country with his mouth wide open. He just made me realize that we were both born in the same city in Birmingham, Alabama, in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm from Birmingham. Those of you who might not be familiar with Birmingham historically, you've heard of Sun Ra, you've heard of Lionel Hampton, Erskine Hawkins. Papa Joe Jones is not from Chicago. Papa Joe Jones was born in Birmingham, Alabama. You'd be surprised the contribution. See, yeah, a lot of things happening in New Orleans, but it happened all over the country. Diz and John were from the Carolinas. They'd never been to New Orleans before. Historically, now I'm gonna shut up because the brother says I talk too long. Historically,
you talk some more afterwards. You talk some
the
more.
only band that made it to New York prominently, that were all from the same city, was Erskine Hawkins, who had the #1 hit in the 40s called Tuxedo Junction. All the bassist people were from all over the country. All the Dukes people were from all over the country. But everybody in Erskine Hawkins' band was from Birmingham, Alabama. Papa Joe Jones started it. The last bass player, rhythm section wise, with Basie before he died, was a bass player that I played with called Cleveland Eden, who was the bass player with Ramsey Lewis for 30-some years, playing Hang On Sloopy and Wade in the Water, and we nicknamed him there after Funk Drop. All right, I'm ready, brother. I'd just like to let you know, Hassan had actually planned on taking me to my grave up here, but I ain't gonna let him. Now, see, one thing about Hassan, if you start playing with him, he'll make you play for 2 hours. I can't play for 2 hours. Can I have that chair over that time? I'd just like to share this with you before I go, because this is a history that in 58 years I've been a part of. When I say unfinished business, these are the people we're trying to finish business for. Okay, first of all, you familiar with Chick Webb?
Yes.
Chick Webb had a twisted spine. They call it spinal stenosis today. One leg shorter than the other, but had one of the greatest bands you can imagine in the 40s. Chick Webb had a battle of the bands at the Savoy Room ballroom against Gene Krupa's big band. After they got through playing, Gene Krupa prostrated to Chick Webb. He's the first person to introduce Ella Fitzgerald to the jazz scene. He couldn't even walk. He was crippled, died at a very early age. That's what we mean when we say we're trying to finish the business. Charlie Parker, everybody knows about.
Yes.
Okay? How many of you familiar with Chu Berry? Heck of a tenor player out of West Virginia. Played with Cab Calloway, Teddy Hill. Chu was so bad, Charlie Parker named his only son Chu Parker.
Wow.
Know what happened to Chu? Are you all familiar with the man who developed blood plasma, Charles Drew,
Yes.
who died in Carolina because they wouldn't give him a blood transfusion that he had created? Chu Berry ran into a steel bridge in the fall in West Virginia trying to get back to Pittsburgh and died because they allowed him to bleed to death at 36 years of age. Everybody knows about Clifford, automobile accident.
Yes.
If Clifford had not passed, no disrespect to Miles, but Miles would not be as well known as he is today. Miles was taken by Tio Masso and Gil Evans, and that's where you get the transition to what they call cool jazz. My father says when Miles first hit the scene, he blew so softly they had to stand him in a chair to get to the mic to be heard. But you get people like Clifford missing out, Paul Chambers, bass player Detroit, Cass Tech, early departure, heck of a musician. Gene Ammons, just like Charlie. See, for so many years, because of Charlie Parker, and he didn't put it out there, like Phil Woods went and bought Charlie Parker's saxophone from the Baroness and started shooting drugs because they thought that if you used heroin, you could sound like Charlie Parker. That screwed up black musicians for 30 years because everybody had to pop to get it, okay? Billie Holiday, you see in the yellow booklet that's passing out, when my father was playing with Louis Armstrong, Lucky Millender, Andy Kirk, Erskine Hawkins, Bull Moose Jackson, we lived on 186 in St. Nicholas in New York on the 3rd floor. Guess who lived on the 5th floor? Billie Holiday, with a trumpet player from Birmingham named Joe Guy, who introduced her to shooting drugs. Historical context. In an interview, Dizzy was asked once, well, where did you get these ideas from for bebop? Of course, he said, interplay with Charlie. Teddy Hill, who had a big band. The history about Birmingham. Teddy Hill, who was the owner of Minton's Playhouse, was a piano player from Birmingham, Alabama. He hired a young kid who had ran away from home by the name of Joe Guy, who married Billie Holiday, who was a trumpet player. In this downbeat interview, Dizzy Gillespie says he came out the bathroom, heard a trumpet player playing in the kitchen because Joe was washing dishes, and he opened the door to see who was hitting these licks that he borrowed from. His name was Joe Guy. KD, Kenny Dorr, monster. He could have been the cool jazz person over Miles because Kenny had this big fat tone. Newark, New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, beautiful musician. Booker Little, Memphis, Tennessee. My God, my God. Eat Miles for lunch, and I'm not down in Miles. I'm just telling you the truth.
That's the truth.
Forget about what Webster says. Truth is anything that's particular in fact. Everybody knows 2 part hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, are universal in principle, the brotherhood of all mankind. So I'm speaking the truth. What did Esau say? Will set you free. The truth. But he said, seek and you shall what? Find. Okay, so you have to seek this. All right? Person that I love, that I met one time in my life, that died at 36, they say, because of diabetic complications in Europe, Eric Dolphin. You talking about, and Eric, Hassan just sent me a thing by Eric. And if you listen at this Black Unity Trio, Yusef that's playing on there reminded me of Eric because Eric always jumped octaves. Eric said he got this idea from listening at birds. I got rhythm ideas in New York. I just told Ryan Closier here, I got this from riding the subway, the train. That's what Elvin said he got his. Okay, all right. I ain't gonna hold too long, bro. Freddie Hubbard was in an accident, got most of his teeth knocked out. His omniture was never the same. Indianapolis, Indiana. Woody Shaw. My God. Talking about a perfect spit miles out from lunch, dinner. Massive. And see, all of these cats, Booker Little and Woody Shaw, Freddie, and Winton, some of them sound like Miles. There's a cat out of St. Louis now named, can't think his name sometimes, but they say he sounds a lot like Miles. But these are the trumpet players that continued the staccato form of playing trumpet instead of the cool form of playing trumpet. But Woody Shaw was phenomenal. Brother that I met at the Village Vanguard years ago, Rassan Roland Kirk, a musical genius. Died too early, okay? All right, Wes Montgomery. I just walked out of Slugs in New York City when this girl came in and shot Lee Morgan down dead on the stage. Tell you, man, about the dues that you play, that we have paid, that you are now beginning to pay to preserve this art form. And of course, the Godfather, John Coltrane. Unfinished business. He got away too soon. Tony Williams. Started playing with Miles at 17. People forget that Tony Williams was taught in Boston by Alan Dawson, a fantastic drummer who was with Eric, Cecil McBee, and one of my favorite pianists, Mal Waldron. Those were the people, Ed Blackwell, another New Orleans drummer like Idris Muhammad, that's who cut this thing Out to Lunch with Eric. Eric, man, I was country from Birmingham, didn't have any shoes. I was sitting on the front row at the Village Vanguard, same way with Train, looking at her, and I was looking at Eric like this. Tell a similar story that some of you heard yesterday. I had the opportunity to meet Train at the Village Theater 6 weeks before he died. When Train came down the steps, we saying, wow, man, it's so good to meet you, man. You're playing. Train said with tears in his eyes and his voice, man, I'm trying so hard to get it together. I just can't get it together. And I'm sitting up there saying, man, what the hell is together that you can't get? He said, man, I practice laying in the bed. He said, I go play to the wall. I play in the closet, but I just can't get it together. This Train now. He shook my tenor player friend's hand, Jesse Taylor. Jesse standing up against the wall. When he shook Train's hand, Jesse locked his legs and slid down to the floor. Train had that type of magnetism about himself. Cannonball Adderley. Fella I played with in Chicago, at the Charlie Parker Drug Abuse Institute, Lester Bowie,
That's the boy. Favorite.
Anthony Braxton.
Yeah.
They were contemporaries of us with the Black Unity Trio in Cleveland with an organization called the Revolutionary Ensemble.
Yes.
Monster. Monster musician that never got his propers. I just saw a Sun Ra concert that I didn't know existed in the 90s in Germany. Sun Ra had
Berlin.
Don Cherry, Lester Bowie,
Archie Shepp.
Archie Shepp, you saw the same
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
Tony Williams,
Yeah.
and Richard Davis on bass in the same group.
Yeah. All stars.
And wow,
Yeah.
you think you've heard something, folks?
Yeah. That,
You better go back and check the business before it's finished, because once it's gone,
yeah.
it's gone. And the devil is trying to tamper with the music now. They made a about face. We were out there. Now everybody wants to, ooh, yeah, Jay. Everybody wants to cat. Drummers be playing and winking their eyes at women. And man, if you playing the music like that takes so much energy, you ain't got no time to be winking at no woman. I'm just being honest with you. I ain't gay now, but I'm just saying. You know? Yeah. Gil Scott Heron,
Yeah.
beautiful person, man.
Yeah.
Just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. One of my favorite persons that I played with in Atlanta, Georgia, George Adams, that did a lot of work with Charlie Mingus.
Yeah.
The last time I saw George in Atlanta, he was walking down Hunter Street, which is now MLK, wearing only his saxophone. He was butt naked, walking down the center of the street, playing his horn. And everybody stopped and listened, and nobody ever looked down. Charlie Mingus, one of Cleveland's all-time greatest, Albert Ayler.
All right.
Train requested Albert, and he and Donnie, his brother, played at John Coltrane's funeral. Train in an interview once said he had a dream, and in this dream, he sounded like Albert Ayler.
Yeah.
Cleveland, Ohio, take credit where it's due. And the brother the greatest celloist that I've ever played with from Cleveland, Abdul Wadud. Never heard anybody yet still today that played what that young man played. They're taken away from us too early. Donnie Ayler, another vocalist from Cleveland, Jimmy Scott, Johnny Hardman. Scott LaFaro died 21, 22 years of age. So this is what we mean when we say there is some business that needs to be finished. I am so thankful that you have given me this opportunity for this Found Performance. And you can put your horn up, Hawk. I ain't gonna play no more. Where you going? Anyway,
Right here.
I'm
Right
sorry,
here.
brother. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
He been trying to get me to come here for 3 years, and I've been lying and procrastinating. But music is like a relay in life.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is saying, brother, here's the baton, brother. Take it on. Take it on with grace and respect and love. Honor it and protect it, because it says across the board in all the scriptures, when the Creator gives you a blessing of creativity and you don't strive to perfect it, He will take it away from you and give it to somebody else.
So true.
That happened with the blues, and that happened with jazz.
Yeah.
You see at the end of this little yellow book, I wrote a poem. Jazz used to be spelled J-A-S-S, and they tried to vulgarize it. In New Orleans, it meant intercourse. So they'll come out and say, voulez-vous toucher avec toi ce soir? I would like to jazz you up. They tried to make it a vulgar situation.
Yeah.
And the Creator said, no, this is my gift to these people, and it's all over the world. You can't stop it. Didn't just happen in New Orleans, it happened all up and down the Mississippi River. W.C. Handy, who supposedly was the first man to write it down on paper, was from Florence, Alabama. He played in Birmingham on the weekend because he worked in the Pullman Standard factory in Bessemer, Alabama. At that time, the red light district in Birmingham was Avenue F. I started playing in the red light district, excuse me ladies, in the whorehouse at 12 years of age. The first time I go on the road at 13, we couldn't stay in the Holiday Inns, we couldn't stay. So we had to stay in the house of ill repute. So I go in my room, little 25-watt bulb, couldn't see, take all my clothes off, jump in the bed. All of a sudden I start, God, I get up and cut the light on, pull the bed bugs. I didn't know anything about this because my mother was very hygiene conscious. But again, my first job was $2, 2 hamburgers that wasn't even made out of soybean, it wasn't no meat, and all the rot gut whiskey. But I was happy, as they used to say, a gay person in a CCC camp, and I don't mean in a disrespect. But these are the people that we have tried today to send our prayers up to and for, and you do the same. And I am so happy because I told the brother, it ain't happening too much. I just got a place from Ryan that is supposed to happen in Atlanta. I've been there 8 years. Okay, I've been there 8 years and I couldn't find it. I actually thought the music was dead. So to see you people enjoying it and portraying it, God bless you, man. Amen. And I ain't gonna start crying, but I love you all. Yeah. And I hope that in some way I have touched your life and I've given you a reason to shine for the grace of the Almighty. Because what's bestowing on us, and I'm through, brother, is that it's our mission now to save the world through the people and stop all of this insanity. And it can be done through the music. God bless you.
Thank you.
Woo!